Hello and welcome to Find Happiness podcast, where we aim to help people find joy and peace through the experiences of others. Today, we're joined by Sean Young, a peer support specialist and trainer in the state of Alaska. Using his personal experience with addiction and mental health disorder, Sean helps others in their own discoveries with addiction. He also hosts. What did I just do? Sorry. I'll get back
It's
to it.
okay.
Yeah. Listen. Okay. Okay. All right. Hello and welcome to Find Happiness podcast, where we aim to help people find joy and peace through the experience of others. Today, we're joined by Sean Young, a peer support specialist and trainer in the state of Alaska. Using his personal experience with addiction and mental health disorder, Sean helps others in their own recoveries. He's also the host of Sitting with Sean Recovery podcast. Yeah, so with Sean's unique perspective, we'll dive into the importance of peer support in addiction recovery and mental health treatment. We'll also talk about the unique challenges and barriers that individuals in Alaska face when it comes to accessing mental health and addiction resources. Additionally, Sean will share tips and advice for anyone struggling with addiction or mental health disorder and how he uses his personal experience to help others. Yeah, we'll also discuss about major depressive disorders and how it is possible to find happiness even through the struggles. Sean will share his approach on working with individuals living with major depressive disorders, role of medication and therapy, how to cope with the societal stigmatization, and much more. So join us as we sit down with Sean Young and learn more about how to find hope, happiness, and peace through the power of peer support and shared experiences. Thank you for tuning in, and we will find some inspiration and guidance as you navigate on your journey to happiness. Welcome, Sean Young. Welcome.
Wha- What's up, man? How you
I'm
doing?
doing great. I'm doing great. I like your look, man.
It's good to hear. Hey, I just keep it casual, my friend.
Oh man, your beds are awesome. How long are they, bro?
Oh man, it's almost down to my belly button.
Whoa,
It's just past my sternum. Yeah, it's 3 years old.
3 years old. That must have been a lot of work, man. That must have been a lot of work.
A lot of patience.
Uh,
A whole lot of patience. Yeah, it's a lot of patience and a lot of time with a brush and with products and stuff like that, and just making sure it's okay.
oh, so where you want to sleep at night? Do you tie it? Do you pack it?
I was thinking about, just taking it off my face, putting it on the side, putting it back on in the morning.
Mm. That's
It's a joke.
oh, I know, I know. And yeah, anyway, so we're going to start with part A of this session, which has to do with peer support. So
hmm
I'm going to shoot right away. So can you share a bit about your background and how you became a peer support specialist and trainer in the state of Alaska?
Yep, yep. So, um, first and foremost, peer support, what that is a person or group of people
Mm-hmm.
that have suffered from either addiction or mental health disorders, and they are successful in their recovery. They're still maintaining their recovery,
Mm.
um, still practicing the skills that they were taught, and handing them back. So, what we have, there's a saying in the recovery community that you can't give what you don't have, right? So, what I have is recovery, what I have is experience in addiction and mental health disorders. So, for me, I want to give that back. I want to be able to give someone else what I was given.
Oh, okay.
So, I have a long history of addiction. I've made a ton of mistakes. I got to a point in my life where I had to look at myself in the mirror and say, "You created all these problems for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to fix it." And so from that point forward, I just put my head straight and nothing, whatever came in my path, I ran right through it. And, I started working on sobriety and getting some sobriety under my belt. But I realized like that addiction isn't just addiction; it's mental health too. Because there's different forms of relapse. There's the physical one where you actually pick up and you drink, but there's the emotional relapse where you start to feel like you want to, and the mental relapse where you start planning that actual relapse.
Okay.
And so, in order to combat that, you have to get into some form of therapy, counseling, group sessions, everything like that. And I started doing that. And the tools and the skills that I learned, I was like a sponge. I just soaked it all in. And I started working my program, actually building a foundation for my program. I was going to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was, individual counseling, group counseling, a whole ton of different groups that I was doing all at one
Tell
time.
me something.
And yeah, what's up?
No, I'm listening to you. I said, tell me something. That's serious.
Yeah, I was doing a lot all at one time, and I wanted to get that foundation because I've gotten sober a few times, but I did it for the wrong reasons, and I wasn't working anything. I wasn't going to counseling, and like the sobriety world, we call that a dry drunk, somebody who just hates the world but they are sober. And so I wanted to do it right this time, so I got sober for myself. I didn't get sober for anybody else because if they left, I would have nobody to be sober for.
Yeah,
I would relapse.
yeah, I get you.
Yeah, and so I started building that foundation of sobriety and recovery, and I got to this point in my program where I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm ready to do this. And I didn't know where I was. I didn't know where I fit in the world, right? Because I just gotten out of the Army. I was in the Army for 12 and a half years. I had about 9 months, 10 months of sobriety, no direction in my life. And one of my counselors looked at me and said, hey, why don't you become a peer support specialist? And I said, what is that? And he goes, I don't know. I was like, how are you gonna tell me to be a peer support specialist and you don't know what it is? So I ended up taking a leap of faith, literally a blind leap of faith, and contacted the peer support trainer.
Yeah.
And she said, hey, we've got a class starting tomorrow.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm all in. I started taking this class, and what it teaches you is it teaches you about ethics and confidentiality, about HIPAA regulations, and teaches you how to respond to people. It teaches you how to empathize with people. It teaches you all the basic fundamentals to be a human being, a good human being in this world. Because it's very rare that you find really good human beings. And so, but it also talks about using your experience and not being ashamed of it. And I was so ashamed of everything that I had faced in my life, whether it was from my own doing or from somebody else's doing, that I was just I was locked in. And at the end of the class, we had to share our story. I was terrified, absolutely scared.
Okay.
And she said, who wants to go first? And I stepped out of my comfort zone. I said, I'll do it. And I shared my story. It was an hour long. And when I got to the end of it, I felt like this weight had been lifted off of my shoulders.
Yeah,
Like I was,
emptied up. Yeah.
yeah. And like it felt like I was handed a key to a door that I didn't know existed. Exactly. And like I went through that door, I broke that threshold, and everything just opened up, right? So I after that I was able to start working at a clinic. I did. I took other courses from classes that I had done while I was in my early recovery and became certified to teach those. Progressively through the year, I started helping not just regular people or people suffering from addiction, but friends of mine, some family members. Just not, I know that alcohol or any drug is not their problem, but a lot of people have mental health disorders and don't know how to handle it because there's a stigma behind it. So for me, I started using what I was taught and what I know to help other people along. And then I started the podcast, and it's like my name got further out there because of the podcast, even more than it did when I was just a peer support specialist.
Proud of you, man.
So thank you. People in the state of Alaska know the name Sean Young, and like one of my good buddies, he comes to me and he's like, "Hey, man, people come up to me and ask how to get a hold of you so that they can talk on your podcast." And I was like, "Wow, that's just insane." Yeah, so that's essentially what it's about.
That's great. That's great. What I really got from this conversation is the moment you open your mouth to talk about what you had kept inside for a long time, there was this release and relief, you know. So most of the time, people just get bottled up with what they are holding in, and they die in silence. I think people should learn to speak and say things that they go through, or say things that they don't really want to say. Just gather the guts, the courage to do that, and they'll feel very light. That's one of the reasons why we have Find Happiness, to help
Yeah.
people get this kind of messages, to know what the truth is, and to know how to go about getting relief from depression. I'm proud of you, man.
Yeah.
Very proud of you.
Thank you. You know, the thing is a lot of people get stuck in that guilt and shame
Yeah.
cycle where and they're so afraid to like open up and talk about things because they're afraid of how people will perceive them or how people view them. You know, when 90% of the time society's not going to care that we did X, Y, and Z, what they're going to care about is how we move past that and how we have made something better out of a terrible situation.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks. Wow. This is great. Great information. It's very educating. So, can you discuss the importance of peer support in addiction recovery and mental health treatment?
Yes, okay. So it's super important and it's not a new concept, but it's starting to become more of a trending topic, right? Like people starting to look and say, okay, we want peer support, I need a peer support specialist. And that's because if you go to a counselor, not all the time is a counselor going to be able to relate to what you're going through,
Exactly.
right? So if for me, like I know that I can't necessarily go to a counselor that hasn't experienced depression or anxiety or PTSD or addiction. I can, but they're not going to be able to relate to me on that level. If I go to a therapist, same thing. They're not going to be able to. They're college educated to diagnose you and say, this is what's wrong with you. And here's what the book tells me I should do. Peer support, on the other hand, we are people who've been through it, or family members of people that have been through it.
Yeah.
So we see, or we have experienced going through that, you know, it's like that pit of despair, going through that pit of despair, reaching out for that help and digging yourself out of that hole, you know, climbing up out of the hole and then finally getting to that point where you can climb out and somebody's got their hand extended to you and say, come on, I got you. And so that is the epitome of what peer support's about. It's about getting that help from somebody who's been through it and has recovered or is in recovery. You know, and there's all forms of trauma that surround that. There's all forms of addiction. I've seen a ton of addiction that I never knew was a thing, like gambling. I didn't know gambling was an addiction. I didn't know that, you know, sexual promiscuity, I think that's a word,
Okay.
is one, right? Like there's a lot.
I suppose.
Yeah, and so like being able, like, I can't relate to somebody that's a gambler, right? Because I'm not myself a gambler, but I know addiction and I know what it's done to me, and I know and I hear what it's done to this other person, right? For me, I would drink a lot, seclude myself, spend all my time and my money and my energy getting my substance of choice. Well, somebody that gambles, you know, from the stories that I've heard, they've gone and spent their whole paycheck at a casino, not enough money to feed their family, right? And so like there's an element to what I can relate to, and that's the addiction, the mental addiction to that substance or that action, because it's a behavior as well. It's not just the physical act of drinking or drugging or gambling. It's the behavior, it's the mental psyche that somebody goes through. That's why it's so dangerous when people get into recovery because they start substituting that addiction for something else. You know, for me, it started to become podcasting, right? So like I was an alcoholic and I loved it, and I got into recovery and I found my niche in podcasting and I started podcasting, but I was doing it so much all the time that I was like, I need more. And I had to get to that point where I was like, I'm destroying myself mentally and emotionally. I got to take a step back. When I take a step back and I look at that and I see everything, I'm like, I'm falling back into a pattern. So it's behaviors, right? It's not just the act of doing it, it's the behaviors that follow it. And so that's why peer support is super essential, is because we've been through it, we've done it, we've recovered, but we're also able to take that step back and look and see the patterns that start to take place and where it could go.
Wow, awesome, awesome stuff. Yes, but like hinging on your peer, hinging on someone who can feel what you felt, like who knows what you've been through. It's easier to relate with people in that sector than just going to, like, maybe as if you're going to confess.
Yeah. Yeah.
As if it's confession. Sometimes confession is hard. So talking to your
Yeah.
friend, like talking to your your guy, it's easier. It's easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice one. Okay, so can you speak to some of the unique challenges and barriers that individuals in Alaska face when it comes to accessing mental health and addiction resources?
Oh, absolutely. First and foremost, the biggest um, blocker of any kind of reception of those is yourself.
Okay.
That's it. First and foremost, it's getting to that point where either A, I don't want the help right now, B, I don't feel I deserve it, or C, somebody else needs it more than me. That is the human nature in all of us. Is we look at a situation and we say, okay, either I don't want the help, I don't know how to access the help, or somebody else deserves it more than me. And so the human brain is what stops you right off the bat from getting that help. It's pride, it's ego, you whatever we're gonna want to call it. The second part of it is there is a lack of resources for certain demographics, right? So there's a ton of resources for women. There's a ton of resources for natives, Native Alaskans, but like not a lot. We're starting to get some for veterans, but overall, there's not enough space
Okay.
because either a lack of staff, a lack of training in the staff, the facility isn't big enough, and or the person doesn't have the proper insurance or insurance at all to bill for those services. So those are just some of the issues that we're facing in Alaska. We have 2 or 3 homeless shelters, and in the wintertime, there's no beds because they're slam packed because people don't want to freeze to death in the
I
cold.
can understand.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, how do you use your personal experience with addiction and mental health disorders to help others in their own recoveries?
Well, right off the bat, I listen because I know for me, I wanted somebody to listen to me because I had, I had things that were ailing me, and I felt like nobody could understand me, so I listened.
Yeah.
When somebody comes to me and they say, "Hey, I would like to talk," first question I ask is, "What's going on?"
Mm-hmm.
And I just let them unload. You unpack your bags, you unload, okay, and then I say, "How can I help you?" Because then that opens up the line of communication where I'm offering myself to help you out. I have a ton of resources. You may not even know about some of the resources that I know. And so when you say, okay, how can I help? It gives that person the opportunity to really sit there and say, well, what do I really need help with? Like, not asking me, but in themselves. What do I really need help with? Am I suffering from a mental health crisis, or is it just a momentary thing? Is my addiction taking over my life? And so I've had people that have literally just come to me and asked me those questions, and then it's just checking up on that person, making sure they're doing okay, right? I can't do the work for them. I wish I could. I wish I could just like, wave a wand and be like, "Hey, you're all good. You don't have to suffer anymore." But I can't because we're in the real world, and that we have real world problems. So, um, you get the people the information for whatever they want to look at, whatever they want to do, and it's up to them to take that step and say, I'm going, I'm doing this. Um, Either let them let them walk and take that step and start the work, or they will walk and fall, and that's okay because that's a part of the human experience is failure. So many people are afraid of failure. Failure is the next opportunity for success.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I was absolutely terrified of failure. Even when I first started this, I was like, man,
I can
nobody's gonna be
relate.
able to understand. Yeah, nobody's gonna understand me. Like I'm just gonna be lame. I'm gonna be stupid, right? But it's all about the experience, and it's about growing from it. If I fail, I fail. That's okay. But that gives me the opportunity to learn from my mistake and pick up and where I left off.
Yeah, I think.
And
Go ahead. Go ahead.
well, no, and that's what it's all about is learning from failure.
I think people should have the attitude towards failure. Have this attitude towards failure and say, well, if I fail, I fail. Who gives? Who cares? Like I failed, and
Yeah,
then what next? Because people care a lot about what people think about them, and then they won't do what they're supposed to do. I get you. I
yeah,
totally agree with all you're saying, man. Totally agree.
yeah. I mean, people look at failure as this absolutely catastrophic thing that they can't come back from, and it's like I failed so many times in my life.
Fail.
I fail all the time.
Yeah.
I fail waking up, dude. Like that's for real. Like I fail when I wake up. You know what I mean? But the thing is it's about making that next right choice to change the outcome of what you're doing.
Hmm. Okay, so how do you approach addressing stigma around addiction and mental health disorders in your work and on your podcast?
Mm, that's a good one. And I go back to a counselor. A counselor asked me this question when I first got into recovery. She said, "Are you an alcoholic?" And I said, I don't know. You tell me." And she was like, "No, for real. Are you an alcoholic?" And I was like, "Well, I guess." And she's like, "I don't think you are." I said, "Why don't you think I am?" She's like, "You don't look the part." She's like, you're not homeless." She's like, you have steady money coming in. You have all these things. You're not an alcoholic." And I was like, "What?" Just absolutely mind blowing. I was like, "You asked me this question. Now you tell me that I'm not like, just come out and tell me, lady." But anyways, so I start getting into my recovery. I'm really bitter that she said that. I'm like super upset. And I have an appointment set with her. And so I start getting into, going to meetings, going to counseling, whatever. The next session I have with her, she said, "Are you an alcoholic?" And I was like, "I am." And she was like, "Why do you think that?" I said, "Because we don't all look the same. You have people that are super successful in life that are alcoholics. You have people that are not so successful in life and they're alcoholics or they're addicts. You have people that are super famous around the world and they are alcoholics, they are addicts. We don't all look the same. It all depends. It's a personal journey." And she said that's absolutely right. She's like, "You may be angry about the question that I asked you." She was like, and the answer that I gave you, she was like, "But I wanted you to see the fact that we're not all the same. We don't look the same. We don't operate the same as everybody else." She's like, "The world is going to tell you, no, you can't, there's no way you can be because you don't look the part." And I was like, "Okay, I understand." So that's how I approach things. Is like, I can't determine what somebody else is. I can't determine if somebody is an addict, if somebody is an alcoholic, if somebody's suffering. That is a personal decision that they have to come to. That's a choice that they have to make in their brain.
Yeah.
And so that is the stigma too, right? Because you look at people And you see somebody and you're like, oh, that person, he's probably on drugs. They're useless. Well, when you put that stigma on them, that label, that useless label, it starts to break down that person as a human being. And so instead of doing that, I like to build that person up. I like to point out the good things that they're doing. Like, yeah, you may be suffering from addiction and mental health disorders, but you're taking the steps in the right direction to change your life. Um, you know, yeah, you're stuck in addiction right now, but you're thinking about getting into recovery. That's huge because not a lot of people do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Or somebody has a relapse. They fall, they fail. That failure part, and they say, I can't. I can never come back. I can never come back. I'm so guilt and shame, and I'm like, you failed. But that doesn't mean that you don't have the skills that you learned before to get right back on your feet and do it again. And so it's all about encouraging that person and building that person back up after they have self-destructed. And that's how I break the stigma, and I talk about it, right? Like you see my TikTok, I talk a lot
Yeah.
about my stuff on TikTok. I'm very encouraging to people. I talk about, about what's going on, and I try and encourage other people, and just tell them it's okay to talk about these things because for so long we weren't able to talk about them. That's the only way you're going to get free.
No, great, great stuff. Great stuff. Okay, so can you talk about the particular difficult case you've worked on and how you help the individual to overcome their struggle?
Yeah, yeah. So I have a friend that I was working with, and you know, in recovery, three things. Well, there's more than three things, but there's a leading contributing factor to people relapsing when they're in recovery, and it's people, places, and things. If you don't change the people you're hanging out with, the places you go or you hang out with, or the things that you did while you were in your active addiction, you're gonna fail, or you're gonna relapse more often than not. So this guy, him and I, I seen him on a regular basis. I would pick him up. We would go for a walk and just talk about life and talk about recovery and how his day's going and what's happening. And he kept saying, I keep going over to this girl's place, and it's like, are you sure you're ready for a relationship, man? Like, are you sure? And he's like, I keep going over this girl's house and the X, Y, and Z would happen, and I feel like I want to use. And I'm like, well, why do you feel like you want to use? Oh, because there's drugs all over the place. I'm like, you are putting yourself in a position to fail, brother. I said, failure is not bad, but you are literally putting yourself in a position to fail because you're hanging out with the same people you were before. You're hanging out the same places that you were before, and you're doing the same things that you were doing. Once you change that, life is going to start getting a little bit easier for you.
I get you.
And he was one of those guys that like took what I said very seriously. And the next day he was like, I called her and told her I can't hang out with her anymore. And I was like, what? I didn't ask you to do that. I just suggested that's people, places, and things will hurt you in your recovery. And so he was like, over systematically the next few days, he was like, I've stopped going over this person's house. I've stopped hanging out with her. I stopped answering her phone calls. And he took my suggestion that I offered him and he applied it to his life. And now the guy is super successful. He graduated his program. He's a line chef at a restaurant now. Like, he's making tons of money. He's still sober. Like, that's all I want for people is just to be happy and healthy and work in their program. So that's one thing.
Oh, great, great. Wait, yeah, so staying out of addiction and all that, it takes a lot to make up your mind to stay off people who've always done this stuff with. It's a lot of courage. It's a lot of courage to say, no, I'm not doing this again. It's a lot of courage to say, no, you're a bad influence, I don't hate you, whatever, but you just have to go a separate ways. And it's for the good of the person. It's for the good of the
Yeah,
person.
it's okay. It's okay to let people go.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I think that's another thing that people are afraid of is like letting people go that didn't benefit you. Like, and that's okay. The person might be an amazing human being, but if they were super toxic to you and to your environment, let them go because they're not gonna help you out in the long run.
All right. So, can you share any tips or advice for someone who's struggling with addiction or a mental health disorder and is considering reaching out for help?
Yes, yes. So first off, you have to make the decision for yourself.
Mhm.
Nobody can make that decision for you. Um, Also, you have to do it for yourself. You can't do it for anybody else. Because if you do it for other people, one, that's super selfish if you put your recovery on somebody else and say, you're the reason I'm sober. That's really selfish.
Okay,
And it's
yeah.
pretty messed up. The second part to that is you got to do it for yourself because if somebody does leave and life changes for you, you're gonna have nobody to be sober for. So do it for yourself and don't put your recovery on anybody else. Second thing is you have to admit, you have to, we have to learn to admit and be okay that we are the problem, nobody else. We can't victimize ourselves and say the whole world's against me, because when you start thinking the whole world's against you, you're going to keep that mentality. So admitting that we are the problem and that something inside of us needs to be fixed, and then getting into you know trusting somebody enough to say, hey, I have a problem and I need help, and that if that person really cares, they're going to get you the help that you need or direct you on the right path. Also be super committed to it, right? Because there's nothing in that moment, there's nothing more important than getting yourself straight. You cannot be okay for anybody else if you're not okay for yourself, and you have to be okay for yourself before you're okay for anybody else, and that includes a job, that includes children, a wife, a family. You have to be okay for yourself before you can be okay for them. And then the second part is give back to the community that gave you so much. Once you're at that point, give back to the community that gave you so much, because doing service work is very important to maintaining that sobriety. Whether it's working in AA or NA or in any of the other anonymous groups, or doing work with a clinic or just outreach or what have you, to give back to your community that gave you so much, because you're going to help the next person that's suffering from addiction, mental health disorders along the way.
Okay, great. But so, how do you see the field of peer support evolving in the nearest future? And what role do you see it playing in the overall healthcare system?
Oh, that's a big one. So I think peer support is gonna grow. There's quite a few states that are adopting the peer support models. Peer support's been around for like 10 years, I think, but it really only started taking off in the last 4 or 5 years. Um, I see that other states are going to start adopting the way that pioneer like states are going to are modeling their programs, and they're going to adopt that, and they're going to start moving into more of the peer support role where peer support's partnering with the person, and they're training and they're doing all the stuff that they're supposed to do. And I eventually would love to see it spread outside of the country, outside into the other countries, because we have addicts all over the place. We have alcoholics all over the place. Just not just in America, but like all over the place. And we have people with mental health crises all over the world. Spreading that awareness to other countries, and helping them with a foundation of how to build a program is going to be super vital to our success as a human, as humans, really.
Excuse me. Okay, great. So, can you share any resources or program that's available in Alaska for individuals seeking support for addiction or mental health issues?
Absolutely. So if you're a veteran, obviously you start out with the VA, which is the Veterans Affairs. Um, they're starting out a peer support program, or they have one built. Also, we have Alaska Behavioral Health Services. They have a massive program with peer support. And Cook Inlet Tribal Council, they have a super huge one, super huge peer support program. Literally everywhere I turn, I see Cook Inlet Tribal Council, like personnel that work, and I'm quite good friends with a few of them. We have the Sean Lute clinic is another huge one. We have another clinic that's going to be coming up to Alaska, or going up to Alaska, that is called Banyan, and they specifically treat. Okay, yeah, we'll stop.
Uh,
It happens, brother.
uh, okay, so go ahead.
It's back.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Banyan, and they are another clinic. They specialize in veterans and active duty military service, and they're going to be super great. I've already looked into some of the work that they do. And then also there's a lot of outreach programs. So like the Alaska Therapeutic Court alumni,
Yeah.
I work hand in hand with them, and they always have peer support groups for people that are going through rehabilitative court systems. Um, and so I work with them, and there's a ton of other ones. Um, there's the Alaska Native Regional Hospital. Um, they have a good peer support program in the mental health facilities. Um, yeah,
Oh, that's enough resources.
and you go to any hospital.
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say you go to any hospital and you ask for peer support.
That's enough resources. And then for people who would love to be into the peer supporting system, like would want to get into that career to help people, because this is really cool. This is not father and son relationship. This is not you and your therapist. This is not like you and your lecturer and you and your teacher. This is you and your friends, you and your peers, you and friends talking your way out of these things. How could someone get into this kind of system and start helping people? So for our viewers out there who need this, who would want to get into this kind of career, what do you advise and how do they go about it
Okay,
globally?
so
Globally.
first off, you got to find somebody who provides the peer support training, and then find the standards to be a certified peer support specialist.
Okay.
Next, you have to do the training. So, um, you know, whatever your state you're going to be in, you do the training with them. It's typically a 40-hour course, and sometimes there will be some continued education hours that you have to do. So you can do it online or do it through any form of a education system. For the state of Alaska, you have to do HIV and AIDS. You have to do ethics and confidentiality. You take classes in those, get certified in that, and then you turn all your paperwork in with an application, pay a little bit of money, and then they come back and they say you're good or you're not good.
Oh, great, great, great.
90% of the time they say you're good.
Okay, that's nice. That's nice. So, viewers out there, you've heard him. If you want to get into the peer support system to help people, just play back and get all the information. Get all the information. Okay, we're done with the part A of this, and I'm sure we've learned so much from Sean. I'm amazed. Like, this conversation is so relaxing. I'm just like this. Like, I wish we could talk more, but we need to go to part B. So,
Part B.
yeah, so here we go. In part B, we're going to be talking about major depressive order, and I have just a ton of these questions for him. So